So I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. Martine Vaugel is an internationally acclaimed sculptor and winner of 2 awards in 1990 and 1992 of the International Rodin Grand Prize Monumental Figure Competition. Her sculptures can be found in Japan's Hakone and Utsuguchigahara open-air museums, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, the Bank of America World Trade Patsuris Plaza in Los Angeles, the Chateau Brissac in France. She is in the collections of Presidents Carter, Aquino, Gorbachev, Reagan, and Bush, as well as Sir Richard Attenborough, Mother Teresa, Nelson Rockefeller, and the Self-Realization Fellowship. Her celebrity portraits include John Lennon, Sylvester Stallone, Michelle Pfeiffer, Ronald Reagan, Sir Roger Moore, Katharine Hepburn, Nick Nolte, Lee Majors, and many more. She taught portrait and figure modeling at the Sculpture Center in New York City. She was a sculpture director at the New York Academy of Fine Art, the Academy of Art, and has opened 4 studios at schools in California, North Carolina, New York, and France. She teaches a summer program in the Loire Valley, France, where she is currently creating a museum for her work, and she accepts 2 commissions a year. Please welcome Martine Vaugel.
Hello. Thank you. This is what an act to follow here. Whoa, right down the line. I'd like to say it's an honor to be here today among these other distinguished speakers, speaking about what's closest to me, art. I always knew as an artist the purpose of my life was to create art. This year I discovered something amazing when I realized the purpose to me of art was to create artists. It was a really phenomenal moment for me. If it wasn't for the great artists of the past, I would not be able to be who I am today. It's the truth of the art of the past added to our personal innovation and perspective that creates the art of the present and then the art of the future. My having looked into Rembrandt's eyes at the Met as a child and seeing the pain and suffering in those great paintings was for me the beginning of my life as an artist. I would never have been able to take all the trials of my life as an artist if it were not for knowing that even someone as great as he had to go through that suffering. One of the ways in which society deals with innovators is to keep them outside. So as an outsider, I would like to say that when I look at Rembrandt, he keeps me going. When I look at Vaugel, Rodin, Van Gogh, anyone who really knew the suffering and showed it in their work, I get to feel like it's okay, I can deal with it. So I realized that the purpose of art of the past was to inspire and create the artists of the future, because artists in every generation are forward thinkers who have the possibility of speaking the truth, and they can have a deep significance in every age. I believe in this transmission and the chain of information that it reflects. I believe in leaving my work for future generations to understand what it was to be born a woman in the last half of the 20th century. And this is what I'll leave in the future. I also believe in inspiring people. I believe in allowing people to listen and create from their own inner source of personal truth and clarity without qualifying themselves in terms of the fashions of the moment. I hope that my life will be an example of that. The beauty of the art that I've dedicated my life to creating and the world of art that I live in, which is not the world of art that you live in. You live in a different one. But is the purpose of my art is to inspire. And that's the purpose that I believe in. I believe also in evolution and the inevitability of it to cast aside the narcissism, which is what I see as what's really plaguing our planet. Somehow we, the artists, the worst offenders, the self-absorbed naval navigators, that's my nickname, naval navigators, have been anointed for generations with the grace to see things that the movers and shakers miss in the rock and roll of the moment. I believe artists are evolutionary warriors out to slay the dragons of nihilism. That's why we're a danger to all governments, to all bureaucratic demagogues who would control the culture through blackmail, the blackmail of rejection, and through bribery of financial security. And that's what I feel. Okay. I have strong feelings about those things. In 1991, at the Global Arts Forum conference in Utah, I labeled myself a passionist. Everyone was trying to label me something, and I finally decided to label myself. So I declared myself a passionist, and I opened the Passionist Movement in that public forum. I didn't fit the description of a realist because, as you'll see from my slides, I sculpt the spirit in material form and sometimes sculpt my personal view of the angelic mythology as well. I believe in the synthesis of the spirit and the body as opposed to the late 19th century Victorian ideas of the impurity of the flesh or the early 20th century deification of the body. I believe the latter half of the 20th century will be viewed in retrospect as a time when the spiritual consciousness of mankind expanded from religious doctrine into a partnership, incorporating the validity and beauty of the body with the essential presence of a personal relationship to a higher plane of consciousness. That's where I come from. That's where my work comes from. And I believe eventually that will be what people will see as the importance of my time. I believe the visual artists, as well as thinkers and creators who see the truth and evolutionary necessity of this union, are the true innovators in line with the next transformation and evolution in our culture and our planet. When I was younger, everyone told me I would grow out of the figure. I believe instead I went through the figure. I combine it with the spirit and create a visible relationship between the two. This to me is a modern doctrine. And just like in every age, the writers, scientists, and artists working towards the same end through a different form, I'm a visual artist creating sculptures that break the traditional figurative guidelines and use abstract concepts and geometric dynamism to create a new, modern figurative model. As you'll see in some of my pieces, some figures occupy the same space. I combine body and soul visually. I believe I was even born a woman to add a little spice to the equation. Sculpting is predominantly a male-dominated genre, and I'm sculpting from a female perspective. As I see it, the Passionist movement is not simply about art, but about people telling the truth, coming from what is real for them, whatever gives them their passion, and exploring and expressing themselves in their forms, such as all the speakers here today, scientists, philosophers, artists. This conference to me is about creative passion and the future, as well as understanding and placing ourselves in a historical context. I've been asked to represent to you what makes my work viable in the context of this conference. So please allow me to explain that although I'm a figurative artist, I use abstract geometric relationships to move the viewer with my creative intentions. Most of my sculptures are created with a spiritual concept that is realized in very concrete and material form to transmit an evolutionary moment to the viewer. They're all based on a personal truth. If I touch upon a universal truth, it's usually after the fact and a surprise. But if I do, then the ramifications become mythic, and I find myself creating a modern mythology, at which point I dance around my studio, thankfully feeling justified in my existence. I'll now show you some examples of my work and hope to leave the room dancing. I think that I'll just say something about that point of keeping artists out of society that have anything to really say that might shake the barrel up. And this is impromptu, so because we got a little technical difficulty, I believe everything is not, it's coincidence, it's wonderful. Anyway, but yes, there's I've been kept out of shows in New York, and I've been doing this work since I'm 13 years old. My first commission was for Nelson Rockefeller when I was 23. And no matter how many people have said, oh, they love it, I still couldn't get into New York art scene. So it's a very interesting thing that one could be doing real work, contemporary work. I hate the fact that the word contemporary has been stolen from us as artists. It now represents a very small fraction of what is really going on in the world. And anyway, I now will show you some of my work. Thank you. Okay, this piece, I'll show you this perspective first. This piece is gotten to be all of the mythic for me. This one I danced around the room for. This is called The Divorce. You might recognize there are two children holding the man, and it's Carpeau was my first inspired me to sculpt. I went to the Met and saw Ugliano and his sons, and from that point on I was a dedicated sculptor. This is my version of how men lose their children. They lose them to divorce, and that's what's going on today. And that's what an artist does. It sees what's going on today and relates it to what's already gone on. And this is my form, it's figurative, but this is what's happening to men and their children. This piece is how I see, as I said, I use the spirit. This is called The Fall. Again, it's my own mythology, but someone mentioned the fall, and we talked about the fall, and I went home and I did this. It's not about the Bible, it's about when we become material, when we get born and become material. This is the spirit entering directly into the womb of a woman. She's taking her first breath, and that's what I see the fall as, the becoming material. Whoops. Thank you. This is the bottom part of a piece that's called A Woman Holding Desire. It's what I synthesized life to be, desire. And the desire in this case is coming from her heart, and this is the entire piece. It's 6 feet tall. It's hard to get it in at once, but it's the spirit of desire which is pulling her through her life. In my case, the desire comes from my heart. I synthesized life as being about desire. I couldn't find anything else to call it. As you can see, everything's very abstract. It's the figure, but it's abstract. I hope you can see that. This was the third piece that I did of the spirit pieces, and this is called The Ascending Spirit. So I synthesized life as coming into the body in the fall, the desire as being what it's about, the reason I get up in the morning. I still think that when I want to be dead, I'll just die. I try not to think those thoughts. Okay, this is the ascending spirit. This is the ascending spirit, and this is what I think happens when we leave. I think we just leave, and in this case, I did this the morning that the English invaded the Falkland Islands, a long time ago, And I was on the acupuncture table and I saw all these spirits of soldiers on the battlefield, and they didn't think they were going to die, because I have visions, and this was just one of them. So this is called the ascending spirit. This is one of what might be called an angel piece, but it's not really. It's called the dream of the phoenix. The phoenix is in the nest, and it's dreaming about the transformation that's yet to come. This is a front view. And the woman is, the phoenix in the nest is like the egg in the nest, and that's the phoenix taking off. It's a dream. It's called the dream of the phoenix. This is the only one that's actually an angel. It's called Saving Grace. And it's the woman being graced by the angel. And I can tell you that if I didn't have this in my life, I wouldn't be here. This is another view of the Saving Grace. This is around 5 feet tall altogether. I did this in Manhattan, in Tribeca. You wouldn't know it. I did a lot of work in New York. I now live in France. But I used to live in New York and tried to show my work here and couldn't get it seen. This is called the Universal Soldier. I did it as a pieta for soldiers. It's a form of a heart, actually. It was a vision I had of the soldier taking the soldiers, an angel taking the soldiers. And I'd love to make this larger if you know anyone who'd like a large monument somewhere. I'll leave my number. This is a piece that is called The Birth from the Heart, and this is what I meant about occupying the same space. This is the heart giving birth to the mind. The heart has got her eyes closed and is in a state of ecstasy, and it's birthing the mind. There's a third part to this, which I don't have a photograph of, which was the spirit, which was coming out of the head of the mind. And so it was the heart births the mind, births the spirit, and it's a trilogy. I don't have a photograph of it. Sorry. It's another view. Well, this is very personal. This is when I turned 40 and decided I wanted to stop the clock. So I made a sculpture, and I made the old crone, the baby, and me carrying an infinity sign. And it's called The Way Before Time. This is a favorite one in France. Oops. It's called Social Security. And I don't believe in Social Security. I don't believe in the state. I don't believe in the NEA. I think that's the National Endowment for the Arts. Is that what it's called? NAE? National NEA. Yeah, I don't really believe that the government should be in anything to do with arts at all. I don't believe in their funding. I don't want their funding. I don't want any controls in my life. I'm living in a country in the middle of a farmland, nobody around, and it suits me just fine. I have a computer, though. I can communicate. It's very good. Anyway, this is about the fallacy of Social Security. It isn't even about sex, but it could be. This is my atom. I did atom pulling energy from the female source of creativity, which is the earth, and discovered that when you pull from the earth, you have to relax your knees, relax your stomach, relax, your whole center goes concave, and you become receptive. So as Adam is pulling from the earth energy, which is Eve, he becomes the receiver. I had no idea that was going to happen, as I didn't know when I made Eve pulling from the heavens, that when you pull from the heavens, if you're reaching, everything becomes rigid. the arms lock, the knees lock, the spine locks, and you become rigid. So my Eve became the erection, and Adam, learning from the female source, became the receiver. Now I'm 1950s born, 1960s raised. All the men I know who are evolving at a rapid speed are becoming more and more receptive. And all the females that I know have become more direct. And I realized after I did this that it was actually a vision of what was happening in today's society. And I did not know that. Sometimes my sculptures throw me across the room after I find out what they're about, you know. It's like, oh boy, I just knew I was making it about what I thought was the source of creativity. This is when I put them together, and they made love, and they made the tree of life. Now, I think this is a very bad slide, because this was in the clay. In the bronze, the man has roots, they're making love, and they're sprouting leaves. And this female came right away after Adam and Eve. This is called the other woman. And what I discovered about the other woman is that the other woman and the other man in all these triangle relationships are always the part of ourselves that we disown, because we leave a vacuum, and therefore the vacuum needs to be filled. And therefore, in a relationship, if you think you're stupid, your husband's going to find a smart girlfriend. If you think you're ugly, he's going to find a babe. If you think, goes the same way for men. You know, if you think you're not rich enough, she's going to go with Mr. Yaya. So here we have, I'm sorry, I get carried away. You got to take me off fast. Anyway, this is the other woman, and I created it and gave it to my husband. I'm not going to say why. Anyway, that's his sculpture, so he doesn't have to go looking. And this is my praying mantis. It's the, the mantis that chops the head off her lover. Well, that was what I was doing. I kept on creating this sculpture a long time ago. We're going backwards right now. I started with I didn't know how long I'd be up here, so I started backwards. We're going backwards. This is an earlier piece where I was involved with more of the abstract and the figure, and I hadn't gone to the spiritual and the mythic. I've done a lot of monuments. I didn't include any of them here because I wanted to show you the synthesis of abstract and figurative, and then just hit these spots. So we're now going backwards. This is another piece which combines the abstract and the figure. This is called the spiritual diver. And it's, if you can see the abstract, it's all about lines. I use these lines, and this is my diver. And this piece is the arrival. I think that's the end. I have hundreds of these pieces. I didn't think I'd have enough time to even go through these, so I just didn't judge my timing right. But thank you very much.